Welcome, Pierre-Etienne Franck, to the podcast, The Hydrogen Leader. I'm very happy to have you here.
So am I. It's been a long time.
Yes, I know. And we will tell the people where we got to know each other. But I know you're a very famous person in the hydrogen industry and beyond. And as you know, this leadership format is about to learn from successful people like you, to learn from your insight in the hydrogen economy, also like the markets develop. So I'm very excited to also learn for myself. So I want to start with a very basic question, despite knowing you quite well. Who is Pierre-Etienne Franck?
As my name tells, I guess people will guess I'm French.
Yes.
I was born in Paris. I had a very classic education, did a business school, and went then to a very large company, did most of my career into that company called Air Liquide, of course, where we got to meet together and do a couple of things already on the hydrogen side, but maybe we'll talk about it later. And then after I moved into the new venture called I24. And besides that, I am maybe two other elements. I am, of course, married. I have two beautiful daughters. And I have deep in my roots the notion of common good or public service, because I'm the son of two father and a mother who are both very much involved into civil service, being on the one side in law, on the other side in medicine. And so that has some implications.
So contributing to society as well.
Yes, and that has some link with the evolution of my career path over the last, I would say, 10 years.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing this. And we got to know each other when setting up the infrastructure joint venture H2 Mobility. And I guess we negotiated everything back and forth for 1.5 years and successfully established it. And it's still there. And I know your company invested now also into this, Hy24, where you are a CEO of. But I want to start with the thing that by that time impressed me most, because we had many discussions about interests and also the conflicts between the oil industry and other, And what always impressed me most is that you were, when we came to this situation, thinking out of the box, where others were locked into their interest and wanted to push through. You had the unique ability to take a step back, to align people on the broader thing. Is this the very core of Pierre-Etienne, which I spotted, which made you so successful on this high level?
I think in some cases it's a drawback, but it's true that from my childhood I'm always loved to be a bit the delegate or the representative of the people, to try to defend something stronger, better. In that in classrooms, in the lycée, and then after also in a business school. And it's true that it's a weakness, because sometimes you want to go fast, and so you want to concede things so that people agree and move. So people may say you're giving up too fast some topics. But on the other side, especially when you're in a nascent industry where nothing happens if you don't overcome your own selfish interests, which is the logic of business, to look at the broader view, then nothing can happen. Those deals we were doing are very difficult by definition, because everybody is at the limit of what is a profitable case. So if the OEMs, the oil and gas industry, the industrial gas players are not giving it with either technology, pricing, or cars, etc., you cannot build a partnership. And it's a fundamental element that I've learned through all the other things I've managed, which were always a lot of coalition. You're strong not when you're in the middle, but when you're ahead. Because when you're ahead, people are all looking in the same direction.
Yes.
When you're in the middle, they're all pointing at you as the central for discussion, debates, and disputes.
Yes.
So if you're ahead, you're trying to move them with you. And they don't look at the other's room or plate. They're looking at what's to be getting.
So you're
further away.
creating a content focus, which is far ahead from basically the topic that is on the table. to align the views again, right?
Yeah, that's the idea. This is why I took those different positions within Air Liquide beyond my classic. I was managing a lot of techno companies for the group before I had done many other things, and I took by chance. I said, if we don't play with the public policy makers and the public authorities and the funding agencies, we're probably out of the game because it needs a lot of regulatory and policy support. So moving into those things where you have to basically align interest from the OEM suppliers, the equipment suppliers, industrial gas suppliers into something bigger. I don't know why I like it. Because also maybe it's maybe the... So I think it's, if I have one strength in this one, is I try to put myself in the shoes of the other one.
Exactly.
And sometimes, again, then I'm giving up.
Exactly.
I'm giving away things faster because I want to find the middle ground. But we don't have the time. And if you win and there's only losers, then you win nothing because you need all of those to work with you.
Yes.
And that's been my, I would say, my beliefs. In most of my career, I've done GVs, by the way. Most of the time, I've done alliances. That's a fact.
Yeah, you did big alliances. And we come to that.
I did the one at Schumann. I did others before that. But on hydrogen, yes, the big one was this one. Enfin, one of the big ones was this one, yes.
So we will come to that. One thing, as you are such a public person already in the industry, I guess you talk a lot, you make a lot of predictions and also speeches to inform leaders who depend on what you say. So can you share a very courageous prediction that you did in the past where by the time of the prediction, nobody believed you, but it actually turned out to be true?
So I thought you were going to ask
We will
me,
come to the bad
what did
part.
you do?
No,
What was wrong? So what was wrong? Okay.
So where you were right with your
yes.
predictions in a very courageous
I
way.
think, to be honest, there is a very good French quote from a very old, he's dead for a long time. Edgar Faure was a French politician, was saying, being right too early is a strong wrong. And I think I have a bit that because I've been often right too early.
Okay.
But I think one of the things, it's not only me, but one of the things a couple of us believed in, which was this need to showcase the dynamic of the hydrogen mobility and hydrogen in general, then to showcase the global role of hydrogen in the transition, then to basically quantify it, map it, do a narrative which is comprehensive and understandable for the policymakers. We did it. Exactly. We really did it because we did it first with Hydrogen Europe. Then we built this Hydrogen Council. We gathered everybody. We got the CEOs interested. And we basically created what people said a hype. But it's not only the hype because it created the vision that you don't do a transition without electrons and hydrogen. Yeah. And so that I think we did it right. Now we did many other things wrong, but I think this one was right.
And on the prediction, which was completely wrong, just to share also the downsides of being such a leader?
All of them are not yet completely proven wrong, but some have proven partly wrong or at least too optimistic. One, to be very honest, was that I was believing far too much in the OEM capacity to deploy.
The cars?
Yes, and they failed.
Right.
And maybe they will have a lot of arguments, but I was too optimistic, and we were many too optimistic. Now we need them to walk the talk on the broader, larger commercial or heavy duty. I hope they will do it. But it left me with a bit of a frustration, to be honest.
So you relied on their launch plans and built an entire industry on it, and then as those were not coming, you were also not looking good.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a good example. We built this network. You remember, we did this deal to say we build the full network,
yes,
at least the 100 minimum station to have a minimum viable network.
Yes.
And the OEM, because we killed the chicken and egg dilemma,
yeah,
OEM will come. And it didn't come. And so now we are repurposing the network to do something bigger for trucks, but we're not going to make the same mistake again, I can tell you. The second type of things where I think maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm wrong. I don't think I'm wrong, but I am worried is the irreversibility of the transition.
Yes.
When you see what's moving on in the US, you say, my gosh, it's possible that the rule of reason and the rule of facts is not going to work. And this is a big topic now, because I think if you are a bit rational and you see the facts and you're a bit focused and reasonable and courageous, there's not many other way than to move into this transition. But facts and history showing that sometimes history derail, and that's a big topic.
Yeah, and time passes by, and
And
doing
it's
nothing
too late.
is also a decision.
Yes, you. Fine, no, we will come to that later.
Okay. I'm already excited how this is going. But you mentioned these big coalitions, and we share one thing in common because we both moved out of our corporate role. But what was your transition? So you were a big guy at Air Liquide, responsible, and now you have your own business, operating the largest, I think, fund, 2 billion euros, as I understand, for hydrogen-related investments. But before that, you created, by accident or by intention, lots of big initiatives. Or how did you become an entrepreneur as well?
So it comes back to the roots. So when I was left with this set of technologies with Air Liquide, there was this baby hydrogen dynamic, and it was a bit orphan, to be honest, because we didn't know exactly what to do with it. Me neither. And I fall addicted to it because I saw, of course, what we all see as hydrogen addicts. I saw the role it could have in the transition, and then it connected me back to my roots, which is to do something which is not only serving business performance and money, but also serving something broader, which is the common good. So that triggered a very strong involvement into trying to move the sector forward. And with time, with all the play that we've did, thanks to Air Liquide leadership, to be honest, because I was supported by by Benoît Potier and the leadership, the whole COMEX of the group, I became almost more a hydrogen guy than an Air Liquide guy.
Yeah.
And so, even though I was still very rooted with Air Liquide and very pleased to be with Air Liquide, everything exciting, new, disruptive, which was very in my way of thinking, as you said, a bit out of the box, taking risk, gathering parties which are different, into everything new, complex. And sometimes they were saying like it, this thing is good because it's complex enough for Pierre Etienne. When it's too simple, I'm not good. And it's maybe too complex. I don't know. But so I came progressively so much involved, and when the occasion came to basically try to move this forward one next step, which is to create a platform to invest and to basically do formally what it was so difficult to do when we did H2 Mobility, is to get people to entrust you with money on a given investment thesis and let you go.
Exactly.
And not spend endless discussions during years for each and every investment.
Yeah.
So basically give you, people say the fund management is like the story of Christophe Colomb when he came to see the Queen and say, give me a boat and I'm going to find you Americas. And you entrust Christophe Colomb with the boat and he comes with something or with nothing, well, hopefully with something. Fund managers is not exactly like that because it's a bit more secured, I would say, or clear.
Yeah.
But basically, you're entrusted with an investment thesis and you need to deliver. And so when we had done this hydrogen council, which is a way to basically gather the vision of everyone at the highest level, and we got some traction with the political bodies, especially in Europe and Asia, and a bit in the US, it came clear to me and to a couple of others that we needed to then embark the financial institutions, and for that, creating a fund was probably a good idea. And so that's when we launched it with Air Liquide. We got a couple of others moving, like Total or Vinci. But what we call the GPs, so the asset managers, what I'm doing now, the big ones, they were not very ready to take such a risk because it's a nascent industry. So rapidly, it came to me that it would not happen if I was not trying to do something.
So you said you built this organization, and to show that you can do business in this new world that you are trying to build, you be again the star to follow.
Yes, well, I don't know if I'm the star to follow, but at least what's funny is in this story is that there's sometimes in your life you've got alignments of stars. Either you take them or you don't. So I was in the middle of trying to launch this fund. I had not taken any decision, and then came back to me, a guy that has become very critical in the process, who I used to meet 10 years before, where we together helped save, we can say it, sell, or at least give a very good boost to Plug Power. And he needed money. And so we invested with Air Liquide a couple of million to say we believe in the company, and it helped him raise a lot of money. And so at the time, one guy was following us, was managing a small hedge fund. It was young. It was called Johannes Minoroth. And so we got together, and he came back to me 10 years after saying, Pierre-Etienne, this idea of a fund, maybe we should do something. And we are that was the start of the 5T stuff.
Yes.
I said, well, finally, maybe I need to take my chance. He's ready to do. Plug Power was at the very top of his valuation, so ready to invest money.
Yeah.
And Andy wanted to basically give back and to say, I'm going to help you because it's a good idea. And so it was for me the moment to test. It was a bit crazy because when I left Air Liquide, of course, they were a bit shit and happy, but we did the thing very properly together. But I had not much. In fact, I had potentially a plug support, but not clear. And I didn't know if the Air Liquide Vinci thing that we had launched, I would manage to get it back. So it was risky at the time. And what's funny is when you believe at something, you don't see the risk. I didn't see the risk. When I was on it, I was completely on it. And it's only when the thing was done, I said, but in fact, I could have completely failed. And it's not over because now the fund needs to work, of course. But at least the first part of the story, episode 1, has been achieved properly. We are in episode 2 now, which is to deploy the fund, of course.
So I also, in preparation of this dialogue, I heard you say, if you think that you can do it, you should do it.
Ah, yes. That's coming from good.
Yeah. You're applying all this wisdom, but this is basically what you're saying, right? Yes. You think that you can pull this off, and then there is no questioning. You have this attitude of, then go for it.
Yes. In fact, it's my wife who gave me this quote, which is in fact a diverted quote from a part of Werther of Goethe, which has been disrupted by an English poet. And which is saying basically, whatever you think you can do, please do it. Action
matters.
Action goes with magic, grace, and power.
Right.
It's extremely strong.
Yes.
But I think the real quote is just I think the chief of the theater who is saying to the guy who doesn't do his job of the day, please do it. You will start doing it, you will see it works. But it was becoming poetic. It's a good play. If you feel like it and if you see the alignment of stars are there, and they were there. Yeah. Because we had created this gathering, the momentum. I was in the middle of it. So it had a traction, incredible traction.
It came naturally.
You need luck.
Yeah.
We had luck.
Yeah.
Because we are doing another fund now.
Yeah.
It's far more difficult because the traction is not the same. It's the same people. It's even better. We have a fantastic team, far bigger than the one we had at the start.
Yeah.
We have a track record. We have a superb process flow to do investments. We know everybody. Everybody comes to us to get investments. So everybody is aligned. And even investing into equipment suppliers, we can speak because you know that well, is like the picks and shovel of the hydrogen energy. So normally it should be a very good play, but it's far more difficult than when we launched it at the first time.
Yeah. Okay, this was great. So now more specifically, so you are the co-founder and CEO of 5T, but then you partnered with a big, if I understand it, French investment firm, which is Ardent, and you have a joint venture to now set up the High 24.
Yes.
Can you explain the structure and actually your investment focus in a concise way?
So it's never simple, but I'm with 5T was the thing I did with this Swiss partner,
Right.
who came to me having a hedge fund. So we joined forces, we created the company, we started to discuss raising funds, and we got rapidly Plug Power, Baker Hughes coming. And with that, the aim from the start, at least on my side, was to then find a very strong asset manager to partner with. And so then we started to discuss with the largest asset managers in the place to try to find the right one. And Ardian is the largest in Europe. He's a fantastic asset manager. It's led by an exceptional woman that is one of the most knowledgeable and influenceable women, at least in Europe, but maybe also in some other places. And
What's her name?
Dominique Sénéquier. And she and a team with her exceptional. So we joined forces very rapidly after negotiations with a couple of others. And what's very, I'm a bit emotional because what's funny is that the glue worked. Because I was coming from an industrial mindset and they're coming from the financial one. So none of us was very much versed into what the other was doing.
Yeah.
So the wedding was possible because none is going to walk on the toes of the other one.
Yes.
And that created rapidly kind of a...
1 + 1 is 3.
1 + 1 = 3 because we have the same, I think, requirement in terms of process, rigor, because they are Liquid, a very rigorous company. They are very rigorous as well. But there is a mutual respect. And so it triggered the traction from industrial players. They were very happy to follow. And the financial ones came in as well because they said, if the industrial have skin in the game, then we can move as well. And if Ardian is behind it, we can move as well because we know that they know how to manage funds. And so the particularity, so 5T is like a Manco, if you want. It's people like me invested into it, and we have 50%, and Ardian is like the sponsor GP, and the 50% as well. And then High 24 is the management company managing assets. And the first fund, which is where the money is deployed, what's very singular and unique, and that doesn't exist much in the world, is 50% investments from large industrial players and 50% from financial players. And so the biggest name of the industry are behind us, in fact. So Air Liquide, Total, Vinci, Baker Hughes, Airbus, CMA, Lotte, Itochu, Ballard, ADP, the Aéroport de Paris, EDF,
It's impressive.
etc., etc. No EMs, but that's another topic.
Let me do part 2 of this podcast, but let's stay on part 1.
Because when we launched it...
So, but to stay focused, what you're saying is this is the industry which is behind you.
Yeah,
it's
industry,
not
it's not only the financial. And financial in. And we wanted industry to get financials, and financials wanted industry to come in.
Right.
And what's the... you said what's the focus? The fund basically is investing into everything that is hydrogen inside, and it's like an infrastructure project. So looking at assets or project developers doing assets. So it means that we don't do only hydrogen projects. We can be invested in a steel-making project, in ammonia, or methanol, or power to hydrogen, or even pipelines, or boats, or fleets as taxis. But there is always a hydrogen, green or clean hydrogen in the middle, because the idea is to do it clean, of course, is to decarbonize the industry or decarbonize transport.
Help the world change.
Exactly. That's the option.
And but one fund is infrastructure related and the other fund is equipment related.
It is smaller. Today it's smaller. We want it to be bigger because then we can help all your customers could be
from Highfinder.
interested. Of course, could be interested to get funding for development, but for that you need a bigger fund, and we are raising currently.
Yeah, and when we met in Rotterdam, it was after more than 10 years, and you said to me, Björn, it's a big bet that we are taking. Why is it a big bet?
Because first, the industry needs to work. And it's not because I have 2 billion that it's going to work. So I need to invest into the right project at the right time with the right people. But second, it's a big bet because we have a very significant leverage effect. So an Air Liquide or a Total, they put 100 million each. The fund is 2 billion. And normally, when we invest in something, we don't invest alone. So we bring with us others. And we're also leveraging normally some public support. So the target, which is going to be the sign of success, is that the 2 billion we put is going to trigger at least 20 billion of investment.
Right.
So this is why it's a big bet, because normally, if it works, it's generating the snowball dynamic that we need to get this industry moving. And today, it's already started, because with the downturn of, we will speak about it, linked to regulation delays and things like that, many project developers have disappeared. Many projects have stopped. But the ones we're in, because we're in, they stay.
Right.
And they have the resilience to wait to the moment where the regulations are there, the policies are in place, and they can decide investments.
So if you put €1 in there, you
Expect
that if everything works through your actions, the companies that you invest in get even much more than this
Yes.
€1 because others join or you acquire additional funding.
Alors, we're not always the only one triggering that.
Yeah.
But if you take an example, one of the most emblematic projects we're in, which is called Stegra, the H2 green steel former
Yes.
company developing a complete green steel project in
I
Sweden.
know this also from a contractual point of view, by the way.
Yes.
But we can
because
speak
you
about
were-
we can speak about that.
That's another topic.
Yeah.
But basically, we've invested a big stake. Globally, they've raised in total 6 billion, roughly, between project finance and equity. I'm not saying this is because of us they raised a lot, not at all. But at least for the equity part, the fact that we were coming in probably has given a bit of reassurance to more generalist funds, very large ones, who were not specialists on hydrogen, and said, okay, I-24, they're supposed to know what they do, so
Let's follow.
we have a bit better comfort. I'm
Right.
not saying we are the only one, but it plays a role.
Yeah, you're a specialized firm
Yes.
and you have a lot of intelligence when you do that.
With the team we've gathered, yes, now we have a significant knowledge on the space, I think.
Yeah. So currently also some of these projects are struggling to achieve or overcome this FID milestone. And what is this normal in an emerging industry that this happens, or what is your view on this? What is the current struggle?
So it's the topic on half empty or half full glass. I think the press and the media likes to look at half empty because it gives a counter buzz, and it's another way to
Make
news. Make the news. But in fact, we've come from a decision of roughly 10 billion in 2020 to probably close to 100 billion now.
100 billion?
Yes, it will be close to 100 billion. It was 75 in 2024. There's no reason it doesn't move forward because we see around us the decisions are moving. So it's not as big as people were expecting, but it's the rhythm of development of the hydrogen economy, the fact that it's on all key segments, all geographies, and now with project moving at the right scale. So we're not speaking about a couple of megawatt, but it's tens, hundreds, or even several hundreds of megawatt.
Yeah.
It's at a rhythm which is 2 times the rhythm of the past large energy waves, which was the LNG, the batteries, the solar, and the renewable. Some people were expecting, if you added the ambitions of Europe, the US, India, China, etc., we're expecting the hydrogen economy to generate in contribution to the energy demand the equivalent of what LNG has done in 50 years, but just in 10 years.
Which is much faster.
Which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Not possible. Hydrogen is an industry. You're not developing a project like this, an electrolyzer of 100 megawatt. You need 1-2 years to develop, maybe more, depending on regulation, and you need 3 years to build. So it takes time. And so, in fact, we're probably going to do what LNG has done in 50 years. Maybe we will do it in 25, because the urgency, the energy transition urgency, is calling for faster move. But let's not dream. We need to do things step by step.
Yeah. And which of your portfolio companies is expecting much better, is performing much better than originally expected? Because, I could imagine that investors get a lot of business cases presented where also later then the performance is a little bit less than the Excel sheet.
That happens.
Yeah, that happens. But do you also have success stories where you say, okay, we trusted in this and this one is really performing well?
I think, let's be clear, we don't have people performing faster than planned because it was already very aggressive.
Yes.
What we have is we don't have failures.
Right.
And we have either project developers who have a couple of projects fail, but others moving forward properly. You have other delivering, walking the talk, delivering roughly what they said. And you've got two big ones, which are the biggest investments. So one, it's still making, it is in the making.
Yeah.
And if it works by tool 27, it will be the largest green steel plant in the world.
Yes.
With one of the largest electrolyzer, 800 megawatt, it's gigantic. And the other one, which is a taxi fleet company, which is a mobility as a service model in Paris, is going well. The only issue for them is the dynamic of a supply of a light commercial vehicle hydrogen, which is not going fast enough, which is a big issue.
Yeah, and I think it was last week that you announced a partnership with Refire, which is a Chinese equipment company. Is this now your new focus? Because everybody is talking about China making moves, whereas other areas are still having question marks. What is your play here?
So I guess you know the figures, but basically roughly China now masters more than 50% on all the segment verticals of the hydrogen industry. I'm not even speaking about the batteries and the rest. And they've mastered that in 5 years.
Yeah.
In 5 years, they deployed more trucks and buses than the rest of the world in 15 years. They have more stations, they have more electrolyzer capacities, electrolyzer manufacturing lines, electrolyzer suppliers. So the entrepreneurship drive, that's the problem. Of course, you've got this very strong vertical decision-making process, which is triggering a lot of questions on democracy. But on the other side, when it is about a thematic and an industry thematic, of course, it's very efficient, but it doesn't kill entrepreneurship. The Chinese players are extremely entrepreneurial. They're very competitive. They try to win the market before raising the price.
That's
So
an important
the
point.
context.
Yes,
that's fundamental.
that's a good one.
That's fundamental. And that's what we are in tendency to lose ground in Europe. And so why Refire? The Refire announcement is a message. 1 week ago, another company called Stellantis has announced that they were stopping in the middle of a very advanced plan.
Yes.
They are focused on light commercial vehicle research, while they perfectly know that this hybridization is very fundamental for their market share because light commercial vehicle does not do the whole segments of use with just batteries.
Yeah.
They did it. It's having a very big impact also on the French ecosystem because there was a lot funded by the government. So the way they've done it, the reasons, the grounds, not clear.
It's a disappointment.
But it means that also they were basically not ready, apparently. And on the same side, the Chinese are moving very fast. So we cannot continue to say we don't work with the Chinese. They're cheaper, they're faster. If they're subsidized, I'm sorry, but we benefited from the Chinese subsidies into developing the cheapest renewable in the world.
Actually, I learned that there is not so much subsidy in China like many think they are. Because I think what China is very good at is giving comfort which market to build. And basically, I've seen this when I was in China, where Xi Jinping, the president of China, visit a province. And there he mentioned hydrogen to play a role in the energy transition. And the next day, all the stock prices of hydrogen-related companies went up because this confirmation meant for all the players involved, investors, businesses, that this is an industry which we now build, full stop.
Well, you remember the quote from Kissinger, Europe, which number? Well, China, you know which number.
Yeah.
It has a lot of negatives. I'm not saying it's good.
Yes.
But for that, it's the efficiency of that decision making is extremely strong, and they also they have kept a long-term view, which is something that has a tendency to be left a bit behind in Europe, even though the Commission is trying to do it. But the problem is that you've got the Commission, the Parliament, the Member States, and then the regulations are becoming very tricky, difficult to transpose, not fast enough, etc. So I think China, we need to find a way to play with China so that they relocalize some of them. We need to do with China what they've done with us 20 years ago, because today they are faster, better, cheaper, sometimes more reliable. They're very automated, so it's an impressive play that they're doing. You visited China, everybody that visits China come back saying,
oh. Exactly. So now on a bigger play, because I know that you are, as you said, very passionate to help the world transform. And let's talk about the different countries. So China is a disruptor. Again, Europe is currently concentrating on importing or trying to import hydrogen. US, with the new administration, is somehow going back to fossil fuel and try to dominate. But also Middle East, I think, is making bold moves. And so the big question to you is, who is winning in this transformation?
I think if you look at things by the access to energy, you've got countries or continents which have the chance to have both the fossil and the green. And whatever happens, they win. This is Middle East and this is America.
Yeah.
Then you've got countries that, thanks to renewable, can develop a sovereignty strategy, which is the case of South America, and this is the case mostly for China. So that's why China is accelerating like hell on renewable. And then you've got the big one, which is Europe, which, whatever the topic, is not sovereign, because even the renewable, we are not the cheapest, because we don't have so much land, we don't have so much good combination of solar and wind in spaces where you can deploy rapidly, massively, big plays with cheap energy. So we need to use the renewable play to revisit our strategy of sourcing our energy, to diversify your access. So that's a way to basically be more sovereign, because you can play with different players. And if you played with the Chinese competitive supply, you could eventually have a cheaper energy access. So if you look at the situation, Middle East normally will win whatever, because they can build on the two pillars. The US could play and win on the two pillars because they could develop green and gray. I thought that the Republicans would do so, but Trump wants only gray. We'll see what the consequences of that is in the future. And China, they only need not to kill their markets by swallowing everybody's market by being cheaper and faster. But China, they are deploying renewable at a pace that nobody's never seen. So in the global play, I think Europe can just not hesitate on swing. It had a strategy which was to empower sovereignty with more renewable, a progressive decrease of the access to fossil, of course triggered by the Russian move. The recent tariff announcement is not very good news, because first, the figures are not very consistent. We don't understand how they can buy so much natural gas. We don't, and then how is it going to impact the green transition? I think it would be a tragedy to shift from one dependency to another. If we want to be stronger, we need to be more sovereign. If we want to be more sustainable long term, we need to be more clean and green. We are also the only one, we are the biggest energy importer in the world. We are the only one capable, by the rule of law, to change the way the other countries think, because
we
they
are
want
the
to
customer.
export.
We are the customer.
And we forget that. This is a tragedy.
Customer is king, there's a word. Customer is king.
But apparently we forgot that. We could say to Trump, yes, we take your gas, natural gas, but you need to make sure that your emissions on the shale gas are limited, otherwise it's not compliant with what we want to do.
Yeah.
I didn't even see that.
So we lost this attitude.
But I don't know why. Because it's, of course, you've got the Russian dynamic, which is threatening us. But it's very surprising. I hope that the way the tariffs are going to be negotiated to the end, you know better, that the devil is in details and that the lawyers now made their job. is going to limit the kind of commitment we've done there so that we can continue to deploy the long-term strategy, which is far more important for the future of Europe and for the rest of the world.
So I think this is impressive that despite your very business-related focus on this concrete projects, you have this broad view. And I think what I found out in the course of the preparation, so I found out that you even wrote a book somewhere between midnight and 5 o'clock in the morning.
Going the late trains from Deutsche Bahn, from
Because
SNCF.
I was so impressed, and I'm not so good in French, but what I get out of it is say that you need to save the world to change it. And it's coming out in August.
End of August.
And please explain to our audience, because I think we all, I'm not getting any money from it, but we want to share insights. And I think what Pierre-Etienne Franck has to say is relevant for all of us. So please explain the idea of the book to our audience.
So in a nutshell, the message is it's very much connected to work because we're dealing with energy matters all the time. So even if it's not purely hydrogen, of course, it's globally the energy player and the situation with the climate change. Is basically trying to say that we have no time to discuss and dispute on many other topics than the only one, which is that the house is burning. It's really burning. We know it now for real. And if we were to just focus on that, we would in fact change many things in the way we work, we do our economic model, etc. And so by trying just to save the world, meaning by capturing this notion of getting faster into the energy transition, it will trigger many questions that we need to solve. But by gathering everybody into that, we have a chance maybe to solve them faster. And so the idea is to say, in saving the world, we change it. And behind that, there is a key topic is that we have a kind of a dilemma to manage, which is we need, and that's what I'm explaining, we need to accelerate the rhythm of change of our economic model, even though the US are doing differently. The rest of the world continues. But at the same time, we know that we cannot, at least European, US, and the biggest emitters per head, we cannot continue to live the same way. We need to get more efficiency, get low carbon, and reduce the consumption. So we need also to slow down our relation to energy and our relation to time, and to revisit what are the key values that we want forward as a society. That's why it triggers a second topic, which is that by doing that, you need to redefine a kind of a contract between the role of the state, which is to be far more clear in what it wants, in the regulation topic, the role of the market, which is to be efficient but following some directions the society gives, and the role of the citizen, which is to do what they can to also embark into that move. And for that, the policymakers needs to make sure the weakest are not going to be the one paying for this transition.
Exactly.
And that's a fundamental topic.
Yes.
And so it triggers a lot of questions. I'm not saying I have the answers on the economic model, the relation to debt, the governance of Europe, and this is the third topic. It's in fact a book for Europe to basically get its act together and be stronger, faster, more efficient. Because if we don't, the role model we have will disappear. And then what do we have? I don't know, because the digital is with the US and the industrial is with China. So
I personally think the biggest problem about this climate change, without having the same level of knowledge like you, is that the urgency is too abstract and it's not related enough to the individual. And this is because every individual there is no need to go for it. The individual can wait. And I think if we need to crack this really is we need to find this sense of urgency at the decision-making level and then incentivize with not only money, the individual to move. Otherwise, there is always a tendency to wait a little bit longer and hope that others move. And I personally think, and I don't have the wisdom to crack this, but this is the hard part.
That's the core of the topic.
Exactly.
Because it's the first time in our, I would say, recent human economic history that an individual move is not enough to trigger the change.
Yes.
If you move into an electric car, you're not going to clean the air in Stuttgart. If only everyone does it, it's going to work. So it doesn't work with the usual paradigm of the market economics, which is basically that if you find a new use case, you can progressively deploy a product that's going to be competitive. It's not working. It needs to be a collective decision.
Yeah.
And also, the other thing is that it's in fact happening and hurting people. So you see the impact of climate negatively when a tornado, a tempest, climate heat is coming. And so you only see the impact negatively. But to see it positively, it means you need to accept to step back a little and think, which is something we tend to forget, think collectively. What do we want to do as a society? The society we've developed has so much developed the need for taking care of each individual needs, then we forgot that we are also the product of a collective system.
There are generations before
Yes.
us and generations behind us.
And you've got people that are the reason why the society works and which are not always the best paid and the best valued, but they are the one that makes the society work. So what do we want collectively to be tomorrow? Do we want to be in the world talking to each other, managing time of relations, or do we want to be what Trump proposed, which is linked to IA, and never-ending productive mindset to just growth, but for what? Yeah. So we need to revisit a bit that. That's the idea also, and that's I think Europe is capable to take this.
Yeah,
challenge.
I think also I talked to Jorgo, and he also pointed out Europe has a chance to inspire because people are looking, what is Europe doing?
Absolutely.
And if we don't act, there is no reason to follow the customer. Yeah, so I think we underestimate our ability to inspire the world, with our actions.
That's the message. We have we are in fact in a more mature situation than many other continents because we are getting older. So we have an economic model that needs to change, but we need to acknowledge it, have the economists to work on it, to see how do we create value in a model where we don't need to buy things so much, but we need to buy time or to spend time with others to learn, etc. And that's another model that I don't know, needs to be invented, but is the future. Otherwise, energy, spending, consumption, and the rest will basically continue to crunch the world.
You mentioned AI. I find this quite interesting because we all see how fast this new technology, artificial intelligence, is scaling up now. But in the meantime, I think the world also understood that there is a lot of energy consumption associated with this. And this is worrying me because it's scaling up so fast. And I ask myself whether AI with the energy is, from a climate change point of view, a threat, or is it more an opportunity to link renewables to this new technology and use it as a catalyst to scale up faster? What is your view?
I think if you combine the philosophy of Paul Lafargue and Elon Musk, you reach the end game, which is the movie WALL-E.
Okay.
Which is that everybody's becoming nobody, just there to be fed with movies and food and not doing nothing else. So that's a joke, but that's not only a joke, because it's true that the issue we have with AI is that AI gives you the impression we are basically winning time and we're going faster than time. But in fact, the link between AI and time and the physical world is energy. Again.
Exactly.
And the more time we win, thanks to AI, which I recognize that's fantastic, impressive, fabulous. It helps on medicines and science in many ways. But each time you saved, what do you do with it? And if the time you save is used to order something different, to look at a movie on streaming, or to go take a plane to do somewhere else, then you're basically recreating an exponential energy consumption. And so where instead of saving energy, it's going to increase further the exponential use of energies to fulfill needs that are saved by time. So that's why also we have this issue of people even the young children too much addicted to screens and not enough taking time with others. At some point, we cannot continue to be like that. So
that's the
it's-
threat part. That's the threat. Is there also an opportunity?
But the opportunity is that, yes, it's helping solve issues at an impressive rhythm. We use we using EHI for our investments. It's helping do the due diligence faster.
And also on this scaling up the renewables, is there a chance to link this, or is
Yes, but I think
it's not that yet.
I think AI will need more energy.
Yeah.
So indeed, if you only use fossil energy to do it, you're going to explode even more rapidly the emissions that we want to avoid. So it's going to be sustainable only if it's driven by renewable energy or nuclear eventually. Maybe not in Germany, but in other countries, it's developing again a bit. But above all, the issue is to manage to use AI in a relatively sober way, and not to say AI will solve everything, because that's not true. It's going to create many other issues. I think what's coming with AI, nobody understands very much, neither me. Yeah. But I'm just worried that it's creating false illusions and pushing us into lesser and lesser connected to the world. More, it's a discussion between are we lesser and lesser humans in the biotop, and more transhuman, because this is what they want, the ones pushing that. And then with the energy that's going to just keep us to the ground and the climate impact, or are we trying to keep ourselves in the world, in our ecosystems, with our human beings next to us, and to develop a model of society which is using technology, but not just for technology, but for human beings.
In a responsive way. Yeah. Okay. So a lot of that is coming from the US. There is one thing that we have talked about not so much is this administration, the new administration. And I have talked personally to bankers in London who have experienced, let's say, this yo-yo effect where you had Mr. Trump coming in saying basically drill, baby, drill. So everybody thought that the green hydrogen projects are now dead in the US. Now there was this new bill, which is perceived at least as a bill for the rich. But you found out that surprisingly now the green hydrogen economy is getting a boost, which I think not many people is knowing about. Can you share your insights?
It's a bit basic. What the industry, with the support of the oil and gas industry, managed to get in the final bill is that the famous IRA production tax credit and investment tax credit has not been completely stopped.
Yeah.
It's been maintained for projects starting up to the end, starting construction to the end of 27.
Right.
Which means that you've got...
Is it 27 or 28?
1st of January 28.
Okay.
So every project that has reached FID and is starting to build in the next 2 years and a half will benefit from the PTC, which is in fact a boost, because it was initially people were thinking it's dead, but also because when you get a timeline, suddenly you become a bit Chinese. You do less study and you deploy faster.
Yeah.
Because it's good, the studies, but at the end, if you don't deploy, nothing happens.
Right.
So I think it's going to, and it's good because in the US, there is an entrepreneurial spirit, which is significant, and I think it may trigger significant project decision. And then we'll see after 2027, maybe they will prolong, maybe they will, I don't know, but already having those projects having a chance to get their support schemes, which were very good. If they were enacted, they were very good. $2 to $3 per kilo was very good. So if they move, it's going to revive or reset the hydrogen industry in the US. So that's why.
To summarize, as a lawyer, but despite being a businessman, I would say previously there was a funding scheme where if you start your project by 2033, you get public funding. Now they have shortened the timeline, but this is actually a good thing because people can get it if they move fast.
Yes. So
and,
they need
that's the booster effect,
Exactly.
that now the decision makers need to reflect on it. If they want it, go for it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the summary.
That's the takeaway.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting.
Yeah, and coming to another topic that you're trying to solve with your personal effort, and recently there has been a letter put out from 30 CEOs, where you are one of them. And when you look at the signature page, it's more or less the who is who of the industry, ranging from OEMs, from industry, big investment partners, and it's called the Global Hydrogen Alliance. And I think and I think it's a letter directed to not anybody, but to Ursula von der Leyen, right? Who is the head of the EU Commission. Can you please explain why did you do this? Are we in such an urgency that there is needed, and why should we now take actions?
But in fact, the idea is to remind everybody that yes, electrification is a fantastic play, but it's not going to solve everything. You cannot move from a world with 20% of the demand is with electricity and the rest is with classical energy molecules, on a world where everything is electric. Second, if you want to be serious on deploying electric transportation, you need to debottleneck significantly all the grids, the transmission, the distribution, the fast charging. And it needs, I think the amounts that have been costed is around 800 billion euros to be invested all over Europe.
To build the electric...
To build just the grids.
The grid.
Not the power.
Right.
Not
just the grid.
Just the grid. And when you know that in France or Germany you spend a couple of billion per year, we are not at all at the rhythm to do so, especially in your countries which are all with a lot of conflict of use, permitting topics going to take endless time. So, second, when you move up the share of renewable, you need to manage intermittency. Everybody knows that. And so if you have a dispatchable form of energy with hydrogen, you can manage it without losing it and not congesting the grid. Yes. And you can also basically disconnect the moment where you charge and the moment where you discharge your energy so that you adjust to the low charges of the trucks or the heavy duty transportation. So, but for that, you need a policy-driven dynamic, because we cannot redo what we've done in H2 mobility. We cannot say we're going to deploy hundreds of stations in Europe
from a private
sector and nobody supports.
Right.
So we say, yes, we can. The OEMs have signed also. I hope they will do more than sign and they will commit.
Yeah.
But if the AFIR, this famous regulation to enable the deployment of both battery electric vehicle charging station, but also hydrogen, is enacted with the proper PPP mechanism or other type of subsidy schemes, multi-annual, then you give a chance to the network development, both grid and non-grid, to do something which is flawless for the final end users. And it's now, because if we don't do it now, it's going to be, I think we're going to lose 10 or 20 years. And China is moving faster.
Yeah, right.
So we need at least to take a decision, because we cannot continue to have, because those small mini projects here and there are useless now. I'm sorry. Yeah. It's okay. Very good. We've demonstrated it works. There are some issues to solve, but the scaling up is ready. Right. The stations now that we're deploying are 1, 2, 3, 5 tons per day, and they work. So now we need, and if you don't have the scale and the volume effect by deploying series, you cannot decrease the cost. So you need to stop having those small topics. You need a comprehensive, maybe Benelux, Germany, France, I don't know, maybe first 5, 6, 7 countries, something, the Ponta.
I hear that Netherlands is moving fast. They're moving.
But it should be a concerted action with maybe 200 stations and OEMs committing to deploy their trucks or their light commercial vehicle, so that there is a dynamic coming on. It's again the notion of being ahead and trying to gather a coalition for that.
And was this your idea?
No.
Okay.
No, but I know very well the guys, because it's always the same. The Air Liquide, the Consi, the same people.
So to put it on the point, if I understand you correctly, building now this hydrogen-related infrastructure puts away pressure and gives relief to the actually electricity grid,
Yeah.
which is why it is, from a policy-driven point of view, a good investment in the future of Europe.
Yeah.
That's the main argument, because oftentimes you hear, forget these hydrogen guys, it's simply too costly. But the society costs we get otherwise are much bigger, if I understand it correctly.
Exactly, and also this is the first time that you can do something at the European level for infrastructure. Europe has been built from aggregation of countries over the last decades, and so all the networks have been interconnected, but here you can deploy something from the top. So that's interesting. Second, you can have it funded by the European budget for at least most of it. And third, it's saving curtailed energy, it's saving transmission grids, it's saving time to deploy. And everybody is challenging it, but we didn't give the chance to hydrogen to decrease cost. The cost of hydrogen have increased. Well, we didn't discuss about that. The cost of hydrogen has increased for 4 reasons, which have nothing to do with hydrogen. Yeah. First, inflation after the Russian war in Ukraine. Second, interest rate raised to fight against inflation, which have increased the cost of energy because renewable energy is only capex, is only investments, or is only interest rate related. Third, supply-demand unbalance. The manufacturing people were not there. The demand was high because it was the hype, so everybody was raising prices to take the best customer. Now it's reversed. And fourth, the regulations were not transposed. It will have taken probably 5 to 7 years between the enacting of the launch of the RED II, RED III regulations and the transposition. And it's only transposed today, I think, in Romania, RED III. And maybe in Denmark or in the Benelux, or in the Netherlands, sorry. The rest, not yet. And the Commission has just launched a paper saying, please do it, otherwise we're going to launch a penalty or whatever process, really? Which is another endless topic. Yeah. So hydrogen at scale will not be cheaper than grey hydrogen, of course, but it will come back to the 3-4 euros that people expect, but only if you connect it to the places where you can produce it cheap, which is Spain, which is some of the Nordics, because typically Sweden. Why are we Stegra in the northern part of Sweden? Because you get hydroelectric at 30 euros per megawatt hour.
Yeah. Okay, so this means basically the external factors we also need to take care, because an individual business owner cannot really influence that, and that's what you're working on. We need to go big to be successful.
Yes.
But we also need to worry about or take care about the pioneering smaller businesses who are moving despite knowing that there will be coming big projects along the way, which can be a knockout punch for them. Because if you try to build hydrogen and are happy to produce for 7 euros locally, and then out of the sudden hydrogen is supplied from Middle East for much cheaper, then you need to worry. But is there a need for worrying, or can it still coexist, big and small?
We cannot say we're in a market economy and not accept the rules of the market. If at some point you've got a newcomer which is cheaper, sorry.
Okay.
I think what the Commission and the country should do is give support, which they've done, to the first movers.
Right.
So that basically the 10% of the volume that are expected by a regulation are benefiting for better support than the last ones. So that indeed the first one, which may be a bit smaller, compensate the cost by those support. But in the end, if you don't play the market, then you're moving into planification and it doesn't work. Yeah. So I think we need to accept that risk.
Right.
But most of the projects now that are coming or decided are far more in, I would say, normal life scale level. So it's 10s, 20s, hundreds of megawatts. Stations are the right size. The fleets are bigger. It's becoming, I would say, marketable.
And that's a good news, because I think your statements give me, and I think also our listeners, a lot of comfort that we should not watch on the daily news of 1 or 2 projects having problems. The overall message that you are sending is the industry is coming. And people are investing and you are moving forward, you are not holding back, and others are following or doing their own actions, bringing the market and building it,
To
actually.
be honest, for us, it's far easier than 2 years ago
Yeah.
because we have less projects, but the projects that remain, they are bigger, they are far better fetched by the teams, the stakeholders are stronger, and they are closer to FID.
Yeah.
So in fact, we have no issue on deployment of the fund. We would have a fund bigger, it would be even better. The point is that we need to make sure the regulations are in place.
Right.
Because if they are not in place, of course, that doesn't work. But today, no, there's no issue to get the right projects.
Yeah. So now this was already great, and now coming a little bit to the close. But I think there are I think three important questions I still would like to discuss with you, because knowing that you have so much intelligence about what is going on, either through your great connections or through your research team, what are the opportunities you are seeing for you and also for other players that are not so visible to others? Yeah. So do you think that there are some really underrated opportunities the world or other players should look at and go ahead with?
Well, I'm not going to give you all my secrets.
No, that's not expected. But
I have I think two messages. I think investors, it's exactly like the golden rush. The guys that are going to make it are the suppliers of the picks and shovels. So the equipment suppliers, the one you're basically working with, by the way, and it's also the ones for which we are trying to develop a fund. Some of them will die, of course, but the best ones will be fantastic growth opportunities. And people who are wise investors, normally they should be looking at that very seriously. And the second topic, we discussed it already at length. We need to find the ways to make working with China a win-win between China and Europe. And I think it's not only fundamental for us hydrogen, it's fundamental for the European play in the world to play the right game with China.
The bridge.
We're already having a big place with the US. We know that.
Yes.
We cannot just get away with the Chinese competitiveness. And here there are a lot of interesting deals to be done.
So you have achieved so much in your career already. But I'm curious what your personal goals are for the next 5 to 10 years. So what do you, dear Pierre-Etienne, want to achieve despite of all the achievements you already have?
Well, you're very nice, but I don't think I have achieved yet what I need, because I need to get this fund up and running, successful, and giving back to the investors, of course, the right returns. In my ideal view, I want this platform to become a kind of the decarbonization platform for industry and transport, with, of course, hydrogen, but also the other elements that enable that. That's one thing. What's the size? I don't know, but it should be, of course, we should add a zero to what we have at some point, because otherwise you're not strong enough. And I hope to continue to contribute with my writing, because I like to do so, to try to continue to be in these other ways of not stimulating, but participating to the debate. And if I manage the two, and keep all my family healthy, of course, which is the most important, then I will be a happy man.
I wish you all the best, and I'm quite confident that you can do this. So the last question is, you are now a very successful figure, and young people look up to you. Probably many young professionals in Air Liquide are now proud of you, what you have achieved. And if you put yourself into the shoes of young professionals, because also many people who are just studying now are interested in HyFinder, what we are doing, because we also want to grow the hydrogen economy. Why would you say hydrogen is a good career bet for them? So is it still something you recommend young professionals to get involved in, where they can make a successful career and potentially be as successful as you?
I think that the beauty with hydrogen is that you've got the mix of all the complexities that stimulate the mind and the entrepreneurship. You've got the technology, because there are a lot of things to be done. You've got the financial engineering, you've got the partnership of different players, and you've got the fact that it's serving the common good. If it's green, of course, if it's green or clean. So if you're a young engineer or a young business guy and wants to contribute to something bigger than you, but still having a lot of fun and excitement and coverage of a very large spectrum of things because it's serving many purposes, then it's a place to be. You can be in the tech, you can be in the financial, you can be in legal, you can be in R&D, so that's fantastic. But moreover, I think you never know when you become or not entrepreneur, but there is a moment where I was tempted to say that to someone. Maybe becoming entrepreneur is accepting your child dreams and saying, in fact, they were not child dreams, because the child dreams is what drives you forward. At some point, sometimes you have an alignment of stars where you can step up. You take it or you don't, but it doesn't come twice.
This was inspirational, and I think I can tell you that actually for me it's true, because when I grew up, I always had the idea to be an entrepreneur, and I said to my mother, I don't know what I want to do, and if I build bricks for houses, I build bricks, but I want to have my own company. And this is what I said when I was studying, and then I took 20 years in corporate, but now I'm repurposing and being an entrepreneur, doing this in the hydrogen economy, so I can buy into that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Dear Pierre-Etienne, it was a pleasure to have all these insights for you. I have learned that while you are a highly regarded person in many areas, being in politics, being in business or other areas, being as a writer, I think you're very much still a human, which I understand are you're following your childhood dream also somehow to serve the society with your abilities, and that is what boils down to. And thank you very much for opening up and sharing all this, dear Pierre-Etienne.
Thank you, Bjorn. It was very good to see you again after 10 years.
Indeed.
It's a pleasure to have this
Thank
conversation.
you. And last but not least, read the book.
And
it will be also
in English.
in English
I don't know when,
at some point.
sometime. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.